So welcome. It's Mark Littlewood from Business of Software and another Google Ask Me Anything Hangout. One of our favourite speakers for a number of reasons is joining us today, Des Traynor. Des spoke at Business of Software Conference Europe last year and did a fantastic talk, which we've had up and transcribed and all the rest of it. And I hope there'll be some questions today about what he was talking about there. But just before we introduce Des, I want to just salute him as one of the most professional, non-professional speakers that we have dealings with. And there are a number of reasons for that. Every time he's in contact with us, he tells us something interesting. He's not always pitching a speech or a talk. He's got a fantastic range of things. And when he comes to you with an idea, there's always something there that you can work on. And he makes every talk he does meaningful to the audience that he's working with. And if you are thinking of pitching to apply to speak at conferences, you could really kind of take a lot out of the Des Traynor playbook. And he also then just lets you know little things like, I'm on the way, I'll be there, and he's always there early anyway, so he's never the one that you need to worry about. But he's one of the most communicative and professional people that we've ever had speaking, and I highly commend, if there are conference organisers out there watching this, book him for your event if you possibly can, because he's fantastic. So let's get all the shutting up from, or I'll shut up, and let's say hi to Des.
Hey Mark, how's it going?
It's great, it's great. I think you're in Ireland today, in a little place called Dublin, which we've been spending a little bit of time over there, because Business of Software Europe's coming to Dublin in May, 16th or 17th.
Right.
Although I have been told that I'm not allowed to call the Powers Court Hotel Dublin.
Yeah, they can be a bit fussy. It's really very, very close to Dublin. I'm in Intercom's office in Dublin here in St. Stephen's Green in the city centre, and it will be like a 30-minute cab ride to get to Powers Court, which is where I believe you're holding your event.
We are, yeah, we are, and we've got a few. Well, we're quite excited about being over there. I mean, really excited about Dublin and Ireland and what's been happening over the last few years. And there are, I mean, just more and more interesting companies coming out of Ireland. The other thing I really like about Ireland, and I'm not from the Irish Tourist Board, is that it's an international transport hub. I mean, you can fly there from all sorts of places, like America, that make it really easy to get to, whereas Cambridge, which is where we've been doing BoS conference, is a sort of 3-hour drive in a car once you arrive jet lagged and all the rest of it. So
I remember doing
So catch us up with Intercom. What's happening? I think when you were speaking last year, you had about 80 people.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the last snapshot was, but today we're about 230 or so people, like 8,000 customers, 2 offices, Dublin and San Francisco. Yesterday we launched a beautiful new homepage. Go check it out. It's at intercom.io. Today we had a very interesting announcement, which I don't know if you saw, Mark, but we are going on a world tour. So
Wow.
A lot of your audience is probably familiar with the Intercom blog. It's at blog.intercom.io. And what we're doing is a live production of the blog, and we're hitting, I think, 11, 12, or 13 cities. We're doing some pretty big events, in some cities we've never got to before. And our kind of goal is to meet and greet customers, friends of the company, connections, readers of the blog, listeners of the podcast. We'll put on a good show, a few good talks. Our VPs of product, directors of design, product managers will all be there to talk about how we work at Intercom. So it should be pretty cool.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. So when does that kick off?
Starts in London. It starts in London on, I think, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. And then we go from London. I think I'm not sure the exact order, but we hit Paris, Amsterdam, Tel Aviv, Berlin, Dublin, obviously, on May 31st, and then in June we're off to the United States and Canada, and then it goes on. We haven't planned out the full thing yet, but it's going to be quite an investment of our time and effort, but we're pretty confident it's going to be worth it, and we're going to create some fun experiences for our customers and etc.
That's really interesting. And one of the things I've noticed about you guys is whenever you go to a conference or an event, you always have a little pub meetup or something. I don't know if that's just to perpetuate the stereotype of the Irish fun-loving, but it clearly works. People love it.
I think like our mission at Intercom is to make internet business personal, and what's more personal than going for a drink with one of your customers? So like we've always had this belief that like that human contact is a real thing. The internet is still catching up with how humans communicate. One could argue the reason that business of software isn't just a YouTube channel is because people actually really enjoy human contact. And from our point of view, that means that if we hit a city, we always want to meet our customers. We always want to talk to them. There's nothing they can't teach us. There's nothing we can't help them with. So it just feels like, if you're going to invest the time and go somewhere, whether it's Cambridge, Boston, Austin, Tel Aviv, you name it, why not go the extra yard, find some space in a bar or a restaurant or a coffee shop. We do office hours for like one-on-one questions. We do sort of evening events where people can come along and like have a few beers and meet some of the team and get to like either voice their frustration with parts of the product, or more typically give us praise for stuff we recently shipped. And it's genuinely like human contact is something that the company is built on and built to augment and aid, and we'll never stop doing that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's very clear in pretty much everything you do. Certainly at the people that you blog about, the people that have influenced what you've been doing, people like Kathy Sierra, people like the Jobs to Be Done guys are all very focused on thinking about it's wet, it's humans really, and it seems to be something that is missing in so much software. So just a note, I think there were a couple of issues for people. I've just got a few messages coming in saying that they couldn't get to the Hangout, but seems to be fine now. I think there was a refresh your screen thing. If you'd like to ask questions to Des, you can click on the Q&A bar on the Hangout, and your question will come up. And if it's brilliant, we will select it. A couple of things to kick off on that we've had in on email. So the first thing was a comment about something that you said in the talk. Your vision is your ceiling for success. What do you mean by that? Right.
I'm a big believer that companies need a vision, and it was actually Paul Adams, the VP of Product, that really drove this home with me. I really think a lot of people dive into startups by building a product that maybe solves their own problem. And that problem can be pretty specific to them, which is fine. That's what really equips them to solve it. Where I think things can get a little weaker is if you don't have a grander vision of what it is you're trying to do. And this, like, to a lot of, like, say, people who are more into just, hacky creative types, this kind of will occasionally sound like some puffed up bullshit, but it really isn't. Like, I think, it's one thing to say, we are inventing time, we're going to build a better time tracker, or we're going to build a better web-based wireframe tool or whatever. But it's really hard to, like, pitch customers on that idea because you're into a brand preference play. You're trying to tell people, our time tracker is better than your time tracker or whatever. It's really hard to inspire a team or to hire people to do that. So if all you're basically saying is like, we have a really cool to-do list, it's not like it's not very inspirational. And also, like, a lot of companies, when they describe themselves in terms of their product as it exists today, you're trying to sell people the past. You're trying to say, come work for me on my cool employee record system. It's like, oh, so it already exists, does it? Whereas like what's way more inspirational to me is like we're hell bent on changing the nature of productivity, or we're going to reinvent, like from first principles, we're going to reinvent how people consume music or whatever. And that's way more inspiring than we've built this cool music streaming app or whatever. So I think like that's one whole reason why you need a vision, is that it helps, you know, it helps inspire customers and your team and potential people want to work for you. Why is it the limit for your success? Well, because I think if people feel that they've done the thing they wanted to do, you know, you'll have retention challenges for starters, because people will be like, hey, what's the point of joining your company? I can't do anything further from here. But generally, it's also if you feel that you've achieved what it is you wanted to achieve, and like let's say it was like, I want to launch an app that like lets people sort and distribute to-dos across the company. Great, you've done that. Now what? I want to make $10 million. Great, you've done that. Now what? You're going to be constantly hitting these sort of punctuating moments in your life where you feel, oh well, I guess I should just pack up and go home. Whereas when you have a vision, like this, you know, like strong visions to me are like, you know, like Facebook trying to literally connect everyone in the world, or Google trying to index all the world's information, or Stripe trying to improve the GDP of the internet, or Uber trying to make transport as easy as running water or whatever. They like their missions that will, in a sense, like they're, you know, they're talking about a future and like what their goal is to get to that future that will, in some sense, never be done, and that's kind of what makes it inspiring. And I think genuinely, like, it's a bad state of affairs if you can do some financial projections and find a place in the future where you're like, yep, I'm done. Now, like the thing is, if your literal goal is just raw cash money, fine.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it might be like, hey, I just don't want to work anymore, so I want to build a product that earns 10K a month or whatever. Fine, like that's cool, but like you know, in those cases, you're better off not trying to like build a whole company or enterprise around it. You're better off sort of keeping it to yourself and like making sure you get what you want. But if you're trying to really like build something that you think is going to like, in some sense, change the world of software or the world of time tracking or the world of whatever, you definitely need a vision. A vision.
And the Intercom vision is.
So we want to make internet business personal, and we have a long, long, long way to go. You know, genuinely, like today, literally in my email, I have emails coming from people called Dave at companies, and the email begins with, do not reply to this email, and the from address is do not reply at somecompany.com, and if I reply, I'll be told I'm ticket number 117141321I, and I could not feel any more like a row in a database or a data point. And you know, the current suite of tools,
an unwanted data point as well.
Yeah, for sure, a lot of the time as well. And the thing is, again, like if you want to, like, you know, spam is another attribute of like impersonal contact in a sense, and it happens because the tools out there are shit. They don't make it easy to say, like, you're trying to sell tickets to people to go to a conference in Ireland. So should you mail people in Australia and say, hey, it's just down the road? Probably not. You know, whereas like most tools, most mail blast tools, probably including whatever you use, it's just way easier to do that than it is to do the right thing. And that's because they're just shit tools. They reward the wrong behavior. So Intercom's mission is like literally we want to make internet business personal. And to do that, we're building this platform and this suite of products that will make it infinitely easier for people to do the right thing when it comes to communicating with customers and for talking to customers when they want to communicate with them. So that's the sort of support angle. Like if you go to Intercom right now, go to our webpage right now, you can talk to us. There'll probably be a video playing. It's probably someone from our support team probably offering to say, let's talk. And maybe you start the conversation. Maybe he or she isn't there right away, but someone will be there, guaranteed. And that's like, to me, that is like every bit as personal as walking through a market and trying to buy off a stall, or as walking into a restaurant and being greeted by a maitre d' or whatever. That's still like the world we want to bring back to the internet.
Fantastic. So great follow-up question from Mark Stevens here. Does your vision need to be based on your customers or your staff aspirations, or both?
It needs to be based on a future world that's better than today, that you feel will be inevitable if you achieve what it is you want to achieve. So it's like, you know, it's like you should be able to have anecdotes or stories about this future time when your world has been, when you have literally changed the world so that your vision is now true. So it's not really about like just what I want to do. Like, yes, I want to build a cool soccer streaming product so that I can watch Man United play when I'm in San Francisco. That's what I want. That's what Des wants in the world. But actually, like, what do I really want? Well, what I really want to do is make it possible so that any sports fan anywhere in the world can consume whatever they want, whenever they want, and participate in their favorite hobbies at all times, whatever. That's like the difference. Is like they should be aligned. I mean, it's bullshit if like you want something that's totally incompatible with the vision of your company, but that happens. And what your customers might want, there's like I've spoken before at Business Software about like the inaccuracies and how customers frame what they want versus where they need to get to. So for me, like the key thing is describe to me a better world that exists, and then have an idea of what it'll look like and how you're going to get there.
Fantastic. Well, great question, actually, Mark. Thank you, and an equally sharp answer because you weren't expecting that one. But that's great. So you mentioned sports, and actually, Patrick Hayes has got a question, slightly sort of off the topic, but sounds like he's going to try and build this thing for you anyway. So his questions: Hi Des, I own a platform to find and book sports facilities called Sportiful. We've started to sign up sports venues. Any tips on the value of working and waiting on quality signups versus scraping and auto-creating sports venue profiles, Patrick?
Geez, I haven't been faced with this problem before in my career of like scrape versus organic source. I mean, like all the trade-offs are obvious. If you scrape, you're going to have like a lot of unsolicited signups. You're going to piss off a few people. You're going to be showcasing things, facilities that you're not directly connected to, etc. You can, if you want to get into the real dark arts, you can probably do some SEO bullshit to get extra ranking as well. That's a very common technique too. I think like some amount of behavior to motivate or attract or grow your user base is necessary, especially in the early days when you need traction. But I think if you like, the grounds under which I'd be more comfortable considering scraping would be when I've talked to like 10 different sports facilities and I've talked to them on the phone or started a conversation and I've been able to convince myself and convince them that there's value in them using my product such that they sign up. And if your conversion rate's pretty high, like as in if on a one-to-one basis, most people who hear about your product do eventually end up consuming it, then it stands slightly more to reason that you'll be doing them more of a favor by including them by default. Now, there's still tasteful ways to do that. You can still do things like, hey, I'm building Sportiful and we're sourcing AstroTurf soccer pitches all over the UK. We've built your profile. Click here if you're happy with it and it'll go live. Click here if you don't want that to be included and we won't ever send you any bookings, we promise. There's a tasteful way to frame that where you believe your value proposition is solid and thus you're making it easy for them, very easy for them. You're doing their homework for them to adopt your product and you're also making it easy for them to step out if they want. I think that's a tasteful way to do it. But the key thing for me is I think a lot of people try to scale it before they nail it. And what they'll do is they'll basically import all the addresses and they'll be like, now let's work out how to build some sort of fucking product around this thing. But like, I think that's a shitter way to do it, frankly. So I would definitely concentrate on the value prop. And then if you're convinced that the value prop is solid, then I think make it appallingly easy for people, like literally one click. You could argue should it already be pre-clicked and they just click to opt out. That's that's an ethical decision on your side. I don't want to comment on it, but like that's how I'd approach that, the sort of thinking on that.
Interesting. So a couple of things about your product development and the way you've been going, because you've been scaling a business quite relentlessly, or 260 people or something now, 5,000 customers plus. You have two sets of users. You have complete newbies. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've got a whole load of different customer personas, but you've got complete newbies who come in and start using something, and there's oh my god, you've got to learn this stuff. You then have people who really know it, and want or feel they want to have lots of new tools and new widgets. And this is something that I know Kathy Sierra, for example, has spoken a lot about. But how do you manage the balance between making it easy for the new people and making the experienced people feel like they're experts?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it kind of points to one of the key key questions in product development. If you continue to improve your product and add features, even if they're features everyone loves, at some point it'll be a product that people don't grow out of, but people struggle to grow into. Conversely, if you don't add these power user features, you'll have a product that everyone can grow into, but they pretty quickly grow out of. And you need to work out what your actual end goal is. So like, if your plan is to have like hundreds of thousands of customers paying you a small amount of money versus having a smaller set of customers paying you a lot of money, that usually points to which pattern you should go for. You go for a velocity business if you want to build a small, simple app, and you accept that some people will need to grow up and move on to the bigger solution later on. However, if you are going to build that big solution, you need to extract a fair whack of cash, because your sales, what the people would call your CAC, your customer acquisition cost, will be a lot higher, because you're going to have to do a lot more hand-holding to get them through. So that's the landscape that we're talking in here. And what I'd say then is what we focus on is to try and embrace a sense of progressive power. You could also say progressive complexity. Most of the time in software, power and complexity are the same thing, as in power, the ability to do a lot of different things. So what that means is we think a lot about how do we guide or handhold a customer to the first point of success in the company, in the product. So what this might mean in some cases is success for Intercom might be, I wanted to use this product to do customer support. So success might be, I've successfully supported 10 customers in simple, lightweight ways and had a great experience. So what are the steps necessary they must take? Let's not ask them to do anything other than the steps they want to take to get to that point. And that's how we can kind of progressively disclose other things. But like, step one in that world isn't, let's set up your routing for your messages, or like, let's set up some messages out to your customers. Step one in that world is, let's forward your support email. And that's what will get them to where they need to go. So the way we think about it consistently is always understand what's the sort of at what point will a customer feel the magic of Intercom, and then how can we like basically give them a single simple path to that magic, such that we can have, we will get the benefit of the doubt when we offer them a second and a third and a fourth path to other, I should say sidewalk for your American listeners, but how can we offer them a second, third, and fourth way to experience more pieces of magic? And like, if your product is good, experiencing it should be the same thing as understanding it. So like the active consumption should also be the active conception, in a sense, right? When you start using something, your usage of it should guide your understanding of it. And that means if we can guide them to use different pieces in meaningful ways, what we'll end up with is, oh, well, now they know how to use 5 things. Maybe now they're ready for a menu that can show them 5 different things to do. And like, that's, in my opinion, how you do it. The answer I just gave, it sounds great. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of work in it, because you end up focusing a whole bunch on specifically onboarding. We have a whole team called acquisition who literally spend night and day, lunch and dinner, thinking about how can we solve from the moment somebody wants to use Intercom through to the moment they're successful using Intercom. And that's literally what they focus on. And they have engineers and designers and product managers who are a phenomenal team, but that's their focus. For a lot of people, onboarding is just one thing you build once and then you disappear. But like, it's not. It's like your product's going to keep changing, so your onboarding is going to keep changing. They need to change like for like.
Do you have a very different experience if you're coming in as an early user? What would you see that, or what would a more experienced user see, or is this about hiding stuff behind buttons that?
So typically, like the difference between an early user, so an early user who never matured, as in they didn't, say, choose to use any further of our software packages, or they were very, very happy with the first piece of functionality they bought and they don't need anything else, their experience actually won't change that much. Once they're out of the tutorial, they'll be using the normal interface, but they won't be like bumping into workflows left, right, and center that make no sense to them, because we have it kind of broken down by your specifically your job to be done in the Bob Method sense, but like really just what it is you're trying to do. If you're an experienced user and you've adopted a lot of our products on the platform, you will have a left-hand bar that has every single product you have, and visually that's noisier than no left-hand bar, but it's the best way to progressively let people move around the product while at the same time keeping the core of the application focused on what they're trying to do. The biggest difference is basically how much Intercom you've bought, if you know what I mean. We have like acquire, explain, learn, explore. Sorry, acquire, learn, like engage, support.
Ales.
Sorry?
Ales.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like we have those products, and you don't have to buy them all, but if you do buy them all, you're going to see them all. But like that wouldn't happen immediately. That would be a progressive purchase thing,
Yeah, fascinating. So then another related question, and this is about how you think about your product. A lot of organizations, and I don't think you're necessarily that different from a lot of software-based businesses, when they start, their core user base is pretty technically literate. Mm-hmm. As you scale, inevitably you take less technically literate people on board. How has that affected the way you've thought about the product?
It's primarily affected how we've thought about product onboarding. Not to rehash the last question, but initially in 2011, July, when we launched Intercom, you had to understand JavaScript to use the product. So as you can imagine, if you're trying to go mass market, turns out JavaScript isn't really a mass market thing. And as we've added more products that are typically used by non-engineering folks, we have definitely had to think more about, well, how can we make it easier for, let's say, somebody who wants to use our Engage product for marketing. Let's put ourselves in their shoes. They are not an engineer, and they will close the browser if they see JavaScript. So what can we do for them? Well, it turns out they have their email list already. Maybe they have it in an Excel sheet. Maybe they have it in a CSV, or maybe it's in some database in some other tool they want to move away from. How can we make it as easy as possible for them, this non-technically literate user, to use our product as quickly as possible, as seamlessly as possible? So that's one huge way we do it. We just make sure that people, the biggest change we've noticed is just the more broadly available, the more broadly known Intercom has been, the more work has been necessary it's been necessary to put into the specific task of how can we let everyone sign up for and experience the magic of Intercom, not just people who know JavaScript. And that's honestly the biggest challenge. Everything else inside the product was never particularly technical to begin with. So it wasn't really, it wasn't like you needed to know JavaScript necessarily to send an email or whatever. But certainly the biggest hurdle, by far the biggest hurdle, was getting started. And that's what we, as I said, that's what we have a whole team who think about.
Interesting. So here's the big mistake question, and it's what's your biggest product mistake in building Intercom, and how did you overcome it?
So I mean, there's been a few. We're kind of
as long as it's one that you can own up to, it's fine. Right?
Yeah, we have plenty. I mean, we've built a lot of features and killed a lot of features. And it's easy to call them mistakes and kind of move on, but I would say that we had to build it to know that we had to kill it, if you know what I mean. It wasn't no one sat there thinking this is a shit idea, let's go for it. At least not in the rooms that we were in back then. So I mean, we've definitely made misses with the product, for sure. And I think one thing that genuinely, and I really mean this, separates us from a lot of other companies is that we're okay with saying, hey, that was a swing and a miss. Let's not do it. Now today, because you can't do this all the time, but today we have a trusted tester group, and we've a progressive rate to roll out a new feature so that we can detect a miss a lot earlier before we polish it and do a whole marketing campaign for it or whatever, right? So that's one thing. I mean, we've definitely had some misses, and older users of Intercom will be they'll remember things like relationship score, which no longer exists, or a user gallery which no longer exists, or there's a whole heap of things. So then, to give you a reason.
Those, I mean, those aren't really mistakes. Those are, you're iterating things, you're trying things, you're testing. So you can argue that those are actually, that's an inevitable part of the process, and you can celebrate those things actually.
Yeah, I guess if we're saying, like, if we define a mistake as something that we shouldn't have done, full stop, as opposed to something that we learned from whatever, it's a slightly trickier question. One story I would say is we had a pretty complex project, and we spoke about this on our blog. It's an article by Gavin Joyce. We had, so a lot of what Intercom is about, like most web software, is text areas, right? And like basically it's you can't tell young computer scientists this, but a lot of your life is going to be dealing with stuff that's put into text areas and displaying it in text areas elsewhere. We rebuilt the text area from the ground up, and we figured it was like 6 to 8 week project, and it was basically like it was a failure is the best way to describe it. Now, like, you could make the case of looking at how much we learned and all that, but we had to redo the entire thing, and it basically became a 6-month project, and it cost us, I think, $500,000 to get it done. I think if we could fast forward the knowledge and put it into our engineers' heads about how weird the world of text areas is and all that, we probably would have been like in a better position. But like, there's lessons learned in all of these things, and they've made the engineers who work through those projects a lot stronger and a lot more familiar with the craziness of what actually happens in a text area. But like, that was it's a well documented on our blog anyway. It's sort of like real holy shit moment for product. And by the way, like, there'll be loads more of these. There'll be loads more. Like, this is software. Like, we're so young in the industry. This isn't like these days when houses are built, they're pretty well constructed, and they hold themselves up and all that. But that wasn't always the case. Software is so young, and there's so much shit software in the world. There will be more mistakes.
Yeah. Actually, brings me on to a question that, from a slightly different angle. I was going to ask you about the companies that are building software that you admire the most. But firstly, before I ask you that, what's the one piece of software that you'd like to kill?
As in, I wish it didn't exist in the world? Or wow, so like, I've probably, like, it's interesting that, like, I've killed most software from my life that I don't like. Like, there are still some tools and platforms we use internally where I'm like, oh, this is gross. But like, even at that, I never feel comfortable calling other companies, because I know how fucking hard it is. But like, if this stuff, like, I'm trying to think. I really am not a fan of the workflow where people email each other documents and sign them like by scribbling and shit like that. It feels very, very clunky to me. Another piece of software I really don't like is, when you're buying something online and it takes you through to some extra layer of security, like whether it's like verified by Visa or like M-Cubed by MasterCard. That shit wrecks my head. Really genuinely frustrates me. There's other stuff as well. I'm kind of somewhat blanking right now. I'm sure people watching this are like, no, Des, you always give out about blah, and I can't think of it. But like, I'm an optimist. I believe most software is well intentioned. Just sometimes I feel like we're dealing with a dumb solution to maybe a problem that either doesn't exist or shouldn't exist. So when I think of signing PDFs, or I think of something like verified by Visa or whatever, what's going on in my head is I'm thinking, this software shouldn't exist, not because it's clunky, which it is, but that's not the point. It's a solution to a broken problem, if you know what I mean.
Or it's a solution to someone else's problem. I think the verified by Visa thing is one of those things that's just a big fuck you from the banks, frankly. Yeah. And I mean, there are so many examples of things in banking where you do things, or you have to do things to transfer money, or dealing with organizations in the States, quite a lot of them will only accept a check, even today.
Like, banks are kind of a law unto themselves, and I feel like if they don't get their shit together, they will get properly disrupted. But like, just like the amount of money. I remember when I was a consultant that we worked with a bank in Ireland, and like we were looking at how much money they were pumping into everything, and I was almost like sacrilegious for me to say, would we not consider opening the bank on Saturday when people aren't in work? And it was just like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, like rather than doing all these stupid campaigns to say we're here for you, talk to us anytime. Like I'm just like, well, you're not there anytime. You're literally not there anytime. You're there on a very specific, weird, arcane set of hours that's probably dated back to like the 70s or something like, Yeah. Anyway, we could go on about banks, but this is not business of banking, so maybe we should.
So the nicer side of that, who are the people that are doing things that just make you feel good about using software?
My answers to this will probably be either boring or typical. Every now and then a piece of software comes out and it somewhat takes my breath away because I'm like, shit, that is literally code changing the world for people. The most recent experience I had of that was when Stripe launched Atlas. I don't know if you saw that, but Atlas lets anyone in the world incorporate a business through an API call. And that to me was just a wow moment because like look at what they've done. Like they've literally meant that like people all over the world, no matter where you are, can set up a Delaware incorporated company with shareholders and directors and all that sort of stuff. And you're kind of well incorporated as well. They've hired great lawyers and stuff to like make sure you don't do any stupid shit. And literally, that's what they did. Like, and when you see that, you're like, that's literally raw, big innovation. And the most interesting part of it, and it's fascinating for its own right, but separate to that, it's also fascinating to think how long-term a play that is from Stripe, because that company could IPO and still not be feeling the benefits of the customers that they've won through this technique. Like as in like that's how big they're thinking about the world. When they say they want to increase the GDP of the internet, that's literally increasing the GDP of the internet. So that's a big one. Whenever I see like these like mushy videos from either Google or Facebook where they're like showing how they're bringing like internet to countries with balloons and shit, like it's easy to criticize and be cynical, but it's also like, look at what's actually happening here. It's immense. And I think like snark is probably one of my least favorite traits, and unfortunately, like one of my favorite products, Twitter, is full of snark and people just looking for the most specific little thing. Oh, you could have got this bit better. But honestly, like when I look at half of what say Zuckerberg's doing on Facebook, it's like he could be on a beach with 40 billion in the bank. Would you rather he do that? No. Well, then let's leave him go back to fucking advancing society, please. And so that's kind of my attitude. I know like whenever I get asked this question on podcasts, whatever, people what the answer they want to hear is, well, there's these three little guys, you might not have heard of them, and they're in like some crazy country you've never heard of, and they've got this really nice photo filtering app. But like that's not like for me. Like I think about like software. I think of innovation as the sum of the change in the world caused by the software. That's when people ask me, is that innovative? I think, well, did it actually change things, or is it just a new way to apply a filter on a photo? And when I think of raw innovation, I think of people who are literally putting dents in the world, and that's that sort of stuff comes to mind.
A lot of this stuff coming out of Ireland, isn't there?
For sure.
What changed there? What's happened there? That's a massive assumption. This stuff's always been going on. Is it just more visible?
I don't. So like, let's back up a bit. Like, so Stripe's obviously an American company. Intercom's obviously an American company as well. However, all the founders of both companies are Irish for sure. I don't think there's no pattern between John and Patrick and us in Intercom, like in that we didn't all go through the same pattern in life or whatever. But I think historically, Ireland has always been a country that's represented itself above its own population size. Of like we're a small country forming the people, whatever. There's always been like playwrights, saints, scholars, whatever. So I think that hasn't changed. I do think Dublin's matured a bit as a tech scene. It's still like everyone in Europe has this deluded sense of, oh, we're the next Silicon Valley. No, they're not. They're just get over it. What I think Ireland does well, genuinely, is it creates a place that augments Silicon Valley pretty well. Like Dublin is like an English-speaking country with a pretty educated workforce, bear in mind, university is free in Ireland, so third level education is absolutely free or effectively free. So there's a lot more graduates by default. And then what's specifically happening of late? There's a bit more money going around for sure. Software, companies, we have had software successes in the past. People, companies like Iona and stuff like that, who've IPO'd for plenty of money and stuff. But when I think of what's going on in Ireland, there's probably about 10 or 15 interesting Irish startups right now. And that might sound like a pessimistically low count, but it's not pessimistic. To me, it's just pragmatic. I think it's typical for its performance. When you think of Ireland being 4 million, Manchester's 4 million, I would say there's probably something similar in Manchester maybe. But aside from that, I don't have a lot more to say. I can say that Ireland works out really well for us. We have a big office here in the city centre, and we have a fantastic team and great individuals. And Dublin's a nice enough place that's such that people want to move from Europe to come to Ireland. And our value prop to them is get all the benefits and upside of working for a Silicon Valley company, but you can stay close to home. For a lot of the Irish folks, it's stay home, and that resonates. And there's a lot to be said for that model, and I think you'll see more versions of that model emerge. Moving to San Francisco isn't incredibly easy for everyone. Visas are hard. Relocation is hard for a lot of people who maybe aren't as mobilized as say a 25-year-old who's single with no children or whatever. So I think you'll see the emergence of this model where people will outsource the wrong word, but whatever, separate one concern of the business. So for us, it's R&D. Our whole product is designed and engineered here, and then every other business functions in San Francisco. And I think you'll see versions of that model pop up. And I think it's a good model. So if you ask me what's going on in Dublin, that's what's going on for us.
Do you find in Dublin that because there are quite a lot of big corporate corporate tech companies, I almost said tax evaders there,
yeah.
Who are sucking up a lot of people? I mean, there are a lot. I mean, the big organisations are employing people in the thousands. All the time.
Yeah. Oh,
is that driving up the price of talent?
It probably is. To be honest. I mean, it's not just big corporations obviously we have Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, LinkedIn, Yahoo, you name it, they're all here. But then also on a lesser known scale, we have Airbnb, Eventbrite, Slack, Stripe, Zendesk, they're all here too. HubSpot, so everyone's here. Now, from an Irish perspective, it's from a country perspective, the tax thing comes up a lot. The one thing, there's 2 points I always make. It's not as easy as knocking 0.5% off your tax point. It just isn't. If it was, everyone would be fucking doing it. It's a real it's an easy outsider's point of view that to say, oh, that's why that's happening over there. That's a really it's a really reductionist sort of simplistic view of how scaling an organization works and what it takes to hire thousands of people. As I said, having a large English-speaking, well-educated workforce definitely helps. Being in the Eurozone definitely helps. A few other bits and pieces definitely help like that. And then I do think the IDA have done a lot to make it easy for people to move over as well. They rent office buildings for you and say, hey, here's where you can put your first team or whatever. So there's definitely it's a well-executed play by Ireland. But does it drive up the price of talent? It probably does. However, from an overall Ireland point of view, the country needs more people paying tax, not people paying more tax. So that's good. If more people want to, if Google set up shop and as a result, hundreds of people arrive and start paying tax on these high salaries, that's great for the economy. The flip side, is talent getting more expensive? It probably is, as the city's getting more expensive, but we're nowhere near the point where tech makes up a significant portion of the employees of Dublin, if you know what I mean. So it's not I don't think it's had that sort of kick yet.
That's interesting. No, that's fascinating. Okay, we're going to take another question here, again from Mark Stevens, and you're going to roll your eyes on this one. What's your take experience on VCs? Good, bad, or just plain ugly? I think the question is loaded, but I know you've got a very interesting perspective on this.
You know, as the founders of Intercom, we did two businesses. We bootstrapped and we venture backed. So I feel like I have a reasonably rounded experience, and I can speak to the pros of both sides. I think the absolute vast majority of information out there, positive and negative, about venture capital and what it's like to take it, is kind of, it's like bullshit thrown in from the sidelines by people who know what you're talking about. And I really honestly believe that. And I've seen this stuff peddled at conferences, big and small, people saying, here's what a Silicon Valley investor is going to do the very second they get their hands on your company. It's nonsense. It's all nonsense. Like, and I've definitely seen some investors say stuff that is also like similarly untrue, whether it's like, here's why you should take a lower valuation or whatever. A lot of this comes down to your belief and conviction and your goal and what you want to do. Whether or not you need money is a function of whether or not you have things that you know you can do that will be positively accumulative to your company. That the only reason you're not doing is cash. If you find yourself in that situation, cash is the limit, right? And in those cases, you should be open, dogma aside, like literally put all the dogma and bullshit you've read about the valley and all that sort of shit, and including all the unicorn bullshit too, right? Put all that aside and say, do I believe if I hire 2 more engineers and 1 more designer, we will build that product faster? Yes. If we build that product faster, do I believe we can charge more money and earn revenue sooner? Yes. If you believe both of those 2 things, you should genuinely, seriously think about whether or not cash can help. Because I like the PS comment is, like, if we believe time is money, you're already spending shit ahead of what you have anyway. Like literally, unless your laptop descended from the heavens, I'm guessing you put money into your business before you started it. So like, it's a real, like, as you said, like it's an eye roll question for me, but not really eye roll. I mean, I like the fact that Mark is asking it because it means he's open to the idea of an answer. My answer is inform yourself properly. Don't think that every dipshit who raised money for some shitty photo idea is typical of the valley. Don't think that every unicorn who's now worth billions is typical of the valley either. Don't think any of those things. Start from first principles. If you believe you can invest in your product today and you can recoup a reward of that tomorrow, you should go ahead and do it. Yeah, be careful about the valuations you take. Don't go too low, don't go too high, don't stretch yourself, don't expose yourself. All that sort of stuff is, like if you think about it from first principles, that stuff's really obvious. It's only when you watch too many movies or whatever that you're kind of like, oh, well, this is obviously the thing that we need to do next or whatever. Like first principles always, and you won't go too far wrong. At the end of the day, VC is a business, but it wouldn't exist if it didn't work. So bear that in mind. They don't want, like, they're not looking for an ownership stake. They're looking for ultimately a positive, accretive outcome, which would come from the sale of your company, which would be positive accretive for you if it was for them usually. So think about it, like, just be open to these ideas. I don't have any sharper opinions or prescriptive advice, but like, it's like most of my advice here is actually anti-advice. It's like, stop listening to other people's fucking advice, Yeah.
And actually, well, I mean, I think kind of leading on from that, it's understanding the questions to ask and how to relate those questions back to your own business. I do see a lot of very early stage companies getting angel investment at a level that means that they see control, or particularly as they're going to start to take off and start raising further funds, they can see control early. The 2 other people I think that have got a good perspective on this. One is Dharmesh Shah, business software. He said something that's always kind of sat there with me is venture capital is neither necessary nor evil. And a lot of people see it as a necessary evil, but you've got choices. You've got choices. The other one was Joel Spolsky, who was always very down on the whole concept of taking venture funding, and then he took venture funding. And I was asking about it a couple of months after it happened, and I said, "What changed?" He said it was really simple. We got Stack Exchange to a point where we had a scalable business, and it was scaling, and we had a really clear relationship and a really clear understanding of, we're putting $1 in here, and we have $5 or $10 coming out that end.
Yeah.
And our limit then became money, and at that point we could take external funding with great people and not lose the control that we wanted to have over the business. And so the further down the line you can go without funding for some organizations, the better.
I challenge that question just for 1 second. Like, it's the common thing is like the further you can go without funding, the better. That's only true if like lack of cash isn't stunting your growth.
Yeah, fair.
Because basically, like, you know, it comes down to what you want to be. Like, you know, if you want to be like, you know, a dominant player in an industry such that you have absolute influence over how it all works, you can't afford to grow slowly or too slowly, because somebody else will probably, like, unless your idea is really, unless you have a massive technological advantage that no one can copy or whatever, which, by the way, are getting fewer and further between. Like, you do need to consider what the playing field will look like. And if somebody, like, you know, it's definitely true to say that like 9 engineers can't make a baby in a month, or whatever way you want to phrase that sort of thing. But for sure, more, like, you know, a larger engineering team will eventually build a better product, and like, not in the first 3 months, not in the first 6 months, whatever. But you'll have all these other problems that pop up, like people getting burned out on the small team because they are up all night with pager duty, firing off and shit like this. Like, it's, I guess, like, you know, Spolsky's case is a rare one in that he had the advantage of having a massive audience to start a community website too. So yes, he didn't need to do an awful lot up front to get the fucking explosion at the start, and then that's what triggered him off. But I would say, like, if you have a cool IDE or a cool fucking productivity tool or whatever, if you find yourself in a position where venture capital makes sense, it doesn't matter about hanging on or like, and you might actually do yourself harm if you say, all right, in 2 years' time, we're going to raise some money when everything's perfect. Yes, there's like an Atlassian which didn't raise for 10 years, whatever. Totally fine. It didn't stop them. But I think it's still the case that, like, you have to look at what's stopping you doing what it is you want to do. And sometimes that will be money. Sometimes it'll be ideas, sometimes it'll be products, sometimes it'll be competitors, sometimes it'll be press. But like, when it's money, just bear in mind, there's a whole industry out there that has a solution for you. If dogmatically you choose to say no, that's fine. You want to go back to your employees and say, hey, because of my personal dogma, we're not going to succeed today. Is that okay? Fine, your call, you know.
Fantastic. The other thing I would add to that, I think that's really great anti-advice. The other thing is, the thing that drives me mad when people talk about investors is they talk about, or entrepreneurs talk about, giving away their company.
Yeah.
They're not. They're selling a piece of it. Full stop.
That's true.
Wow, I can't believe this is like shot by. It's coming up to 6 o'clock. So I fear our time's up, but it's always fantastic to talk to you. Really, really insightful. So we will be posting this up on the site. And how long are you in Ireland for? When are you heading back to San Francisco?
I'm here until Easter Monday, which is Monday, and then I fly back to San Francisco, where I'll be around for a few weeks, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
Fantastic. I think I'm heading over to Dublin on the 6th or 7th of April or something for a couple of things, and I'd love to hook up with some of your guys, or even or just come and see the office or something, and
sure.
pay our respects. But, brilliant. If anyone else has got any questions, you can drop us an email, or Des is Des Traynor at Twitter. And where else do you like to be found?
Twitter is best, to be honest with you. I used to say Facebook or LinkedIn, but I don't really check them. So Twitter is probably the best way to ping me.
LinkedIn gets harder to check every day. That is the one piece of software that I have to use, and it does annoy me.
I'll tell you, their mobile app is streets ahead of their desktop app. So if they could get the team that did the mobile onto the web, they'd be set.
Des, fantastic, great to talk to you. Maybe look forward to seeing some of your team in early April, and we'll be over for Business Software Conference Ireland or Europe, May 16th and 17th. Got some fantastic speakers, and also Business Software USA is really coming on. We just had Jason Fried has agreed to speak this week. So we've got lots of stuff coming on, and really good luck. Really appreciate your time, and we'll speak soon.
Fantastic.
Take care, everybody.